Hello classic rock fans. Today I'm going to dive in on a new box set compilation from my favorite independent label, Cherry Red Records. And it's called Young and Wild, A Decade of American Glam Metal 1982 to 1992. It's a 3-CD deep dive into the hairspray-drenched world of 1980s American glam rock. This was released back in May, and it's a celebration of 80s glam rock, that glorious decade of hair metal, which was hugely important for classic rock. On this compilation are songs from some of the biggest names in rock history, along with songs from artists who aren't necessarily household names, but still contributed iconic moments to this genre. So the bigger names include Kiss, Sammy Hagar, Bon Jovi, David Lee Roth, Poison, and Cheap Trick. And the reason I wanted to talk about this collection today is that there's a bunch of songs here that have connections to artists I've been covering on this channel lately. To start, I was just at Rockin' Pod a couple of months ago, and I interviewed Brian Forsyth, who's been in Kix and Rhino Bucket, both of whom have songs on this collection. And I also interviewed Billy Sheehan at Rockin' Pod, and he's got some songs here because he was in David Lee Roth's band and Extreme. And then not too long after that, I actually met Rick Nielsen from Cheap Trick as he was promoting his new vodka brand. And Cheap Trick's included on this collection, as is Dokken, who I talked about with Mick Strawn as he worked on their music video for Dream Warriors back in the day. And then just last month, I reviewed a show at Summerfest in Milwaukee in which I saw Enough's Enough, Vixen, and Sebastian Bach, all of whom are included on this collection. So I've been thinking about this 80s glam rock all year, and this new collection was the perfect way for me to really dive into the genre. As is standard for all Cherry Red releases, this collection includes a beautiful booklet that has photos and some essays from writers James Barber and Richard Anderson that detail every song included here. Now, if you know anything about this genre, and you look at the track list of this compilation, you might feel that there's a couple of big-name artists that are missing. And yes, it would have been nice to have some songs from Van Halen, or Guns N' Roses, or Def Leppard, but unfortunately, some artists at that level have contracts that prohibit any of their music from being included in multi-artist compilations like this. And there's just no getting around that, unfortunately. But Cherry Red did find some creative ways to include at least some of those artists. For instance, for Van Halen fans, you have songs from both David Lee Roth and Sammy Hagar here. And for GNR fans, there's a song from Hollywood Rose, and I'll talk about that shortly. The bottom line is that collections like these from Cherry Red Records are not your typical hits compilations. This was very carefully curated to capture the music from a specific scene from a specific period in time. As this music was incredibly important to that era, you can't really talk about 80s pop culture without acknowledging the glam rock of that era. Which is why projects like these from Cherry Red are just so cool. They set the theme and then work very hard to carefully curate a collection like this, which is not an easy task. You can tell that this was designed by people who are not just extremely knowledgeable about this genre, but also have a very strong love for it as well. A lot of care went into this box set, which is why I think it's worth getting a hold of. So let's talk about each of the 3 discs on this album to give you an idea of what you can expect with this collection. Disc 1 is called Kicking Down the Door, and it includes songs from some seriously big-name artists like Twisted Sister, Sammy Hagar, Billy Squier, Kiss, Bon Jovi, Rat, Dokken, Tesla, Cheap Trick, and David Lee Roth. Plus the song Bang Your Head Metal Health from Quiet Riot, which I think is like the most important song to have in this entire collection, as I think that's the quintessential song of this whole genre. And as the name Kicking Down the Door would imply, this disc is made up of some of the earliest breakthrough hits for this genre. And of course, there's some fantastic lesser-known tracks here like Shake Me by Cinderella and On the Road to Rock by a band called Kick-Axe. I wasn't familiar with Kick-Axe before this, but I like that song, so I'm interested to hear more. And then, like I said earlier, there's a song from Hollywood Rose. It's called Shadow of Your Love, and that's an inspired choice. So this band is proto-GNR. Basically, it was a band that had a bunch of the guys from Guns N' Roses, including Axl and Slash, in it, but they didn't put anything out on record before they became Guns N' Roses. This studio version of Shadow of Your Love was actually pulled from a compilation of old recordings that Guns N' Roses put out back in 2004. It was an archival release, So that's a really clever way for Cherry Red to get around contractual issues that would have prevented Guns N' Roses music from being here. They're not able to clear anything from GNR's studio albums, so they found an archival release that they were able to get clearance for, and now you have Axl and Slash, who are hugely important to this genre, included in this collection. And it's a really good song, so I'm really impressed with how Cherry Red handled this. The second disc is called Total Domination, and it includes songs from Poison, Kix, Vinnie Vincent Invasion, Vixen, and Ace Frehley. Talk Dirty to Me from Poison opens the disc, and that's an all-timer for this genre, and really the 80s as a whole, so that's a very strong track to open the disc with. I was really happy to see Waiting for the Big One from Femme Fatale here. That's Lorraine Lewis's band. I saw her perform with Vixen a couple of years ago, and she has since left Vixen, and on social media I saw that she said that she's putting Femme Fatale back together and that they are actually working on a new album. So I don't know when that's coming, but I'm glad to see that their big hit is included here. Oh, and since I mentioned Vixen, Edge of a Broken Heart is on this disc as well. As is Don't Close Your Eyes from Kix. Now I understand why that's included here, as that song was their biggest hit. It was also a ballad, and ballads were a huge part of this 80s glam rock decade. But personally, I was hoping this would be a band that Cherry Red would go a little deeper into the catalog for, because I am such a fan of those first 3 albums. But unfortunately, those albums didn't really punch through. If you want to learn a little bit more about Kix, be sure to check out my interview with Brian Forsyth from Rockin' Pod. Okay, what else is here? Okay, there's Dirty Rhythm by the Vinnie Vincent Invasion. That's from their second album, so that's Mark Slaughter on vocals, which is unlike their first album, which had Robert Fleischman singing. A lot of people don't know that because he wasn't properly credited at the time. I wasn't able to ask him about that specifically when I interviewed him at Rockin' Pod, but if you want to learn a little bit more about Robert Fleischman, you can check out my interview with him. And then finally, I should say, I'm happy to see Ace Frehley's cover of ELO's Do Ya here. That's actually a really good cover of that song, and I don't know a whole lot of Ace's solo songs, and this was a fun one, so I'm glad to see it included here. And finally, that brings us to Disc 3, which is called Evolve or Die. And some of the big names on this disc are Skid Row, Enough's Enough, Warrant, Winger, Rhino Bucket, Jackal, and Extreme. These songs are from the final years of the glam rock decade, but this decade did not go out on a whimper. You gotta remember that in 1989, there was a whole bunch of glam rock bands that put out their debut albums. So there was a very strong last gasp for this genre before grunge totally took over in the mid-90s. And the songs here are a little different than the previous 2 discs. Like the title implies, Evolve or Die, music trends were changing, and you start to hear that on the tracks on this disc. And I think it's because of the changes that these bands made at this time that the popularity of this glam rock genre was extended by a few years into the 90s. This disc opens with Youth Gone Wild, which is Skid Row's best song, and it's followed by Fly High Michelle from Enough's Enough. And like I mentioned earlier, I reviewed shows from both of those bands when I saw them at Summerfest just last month. A few songs later, you have Down Boys by Warrant, which is one of their best songs. And I saw Warrant play a couple of years ago with Lita Ford, and you can check out that review if you'd like. Although, speaking of Lita Ford, one mild criticism I might have for this collection is that Lita is not included here. And I don't know if she has one of those contracts that prohibits her music from being used on collections like these. I'd be surprised if that were the case. She definitely should have been in this collection. If it were up to me, I would have kicked out Bullet Boys in favor of Lita Ford. But that's just me. This disc and the collection as a whole concludes with Inside Out by XYZ, which is a very fun sing-along and a strong way to close out the collection. So yeah, this collection really impressed me. I have been thinking about this genre of music basically all year, and this collection was a great way for me to rediscover some songs I love and also introduce myself to some bands that I need to know more about. So if you're interested in getting a deep dive on the glam rock era of the 80s and early 90s, You cannot go wrong with this collection. This is an excellent collection, and I've had a lot of fun talking about it today. So if you'd like to see me do more of these reviews, please let me know in the comments. I like talking about new products that celebrate the music that we all love. So if this was useful to you or enjoyable to watch, please let me know if I should do more of these in the comments below. And if I hear back from you that this is worth your time, I will absolutely seek out more projects to highlight here on this channel. And be sure to let me know if you got your hands on this collection and tell me what you think of Young and Wild, A Decade of Glam Rock. Are there tracks that don't really need to be here? And were there any missed opportunities? Tell me what you think in the comments below. If you'd like to get this collection, you can go to Cherry Red Records' website, cherryred.co.uk, and you can also find this on Amazon. And if you're not sure that you're going to get this collection today, I would definitely encourage you to at least find Cherry Red on social media and subscribe to their newsletter, as they put out awesome compilations like this all the time. And I am sure they have something in their catalog that you would be interested in. So with that, I will just say thank you very much for watching this video. Check out some of the other videos on this channel that I've referenced in this conversation. Be sure to find Cherry Red on social media, and keep rocking.